Welcome to Saints on Cinema. I am Tim Wilde, and we have a special guest again with us, visiting the channel, G.I.Joburg's very own Steve Jubber from Australia. Still
down under.
Down under. You got some G.I. Joes on the Bobby. Awful.
Yes,
farewell today. So I just reached out to Steve a few minutes ago because I just walked out of the I didn't walk out of the theater. Not like I was frustrated and left. I finished the movie and then retreated from the theater. Is retreated a good word? Of watching The Batman, not just Batman. And I was like, Steve, do you have a dog in this fight? Like, do you care about these movies? Is this one of your things? He said, I don't know what he said. What you can just answer it live right here, not live. But go ahead. Do you have
you asked me, do I have any strong opinions about this film? It was what you asked me, and I said, well, I enjoyed it less than I hoped I would, because I think a lot of people were hoping that this film would kind of be a return to form of the Batman character, like put him back on the pedestal he belongs, that Chris Nolan, with the kind of the high watermark of The Dark Knight, achieved. Begins and Dark Knight Rises are fabulous films, but I think, the one that sticks out in everyone's memory is the kind of crime noir with the late Heath Ledger. Like, we want to see Batman portrayed as well as possible, and we've tasted a bit of that. So we were hoping that this was another kind of auteur film that could achieve that status. And maybe I set my expectations a little too high, because it did some things that were excellent, but it also feels a little bit middling and not something that I'm looking forward to rewatching. In fact, I might not rewatch it at all. So.
Good point. Or that's an interesting point that you say that. And I just want to say,
whereas I can stick the Dark Knight on any day, all day, any week.
Really?
There's always something to take from that film, I find.
Yes. Okay, so we're gonna come back to that. But I just want to say, like, I love Superman. Everyone knows I love Superman. Like, when a Superman movie comes out, I get very passionate and I take it very seriously. Kind of like a G.I. Joe movie for you, Steve. I'm sure that's a lot higher stakes for you.
G.I. Joe in cinema is nowhere, my friend. I would die very quickly on that hill if I was trying to defend it. No.
Right. But I just want to indicate, I do have a Batman corner in my room. There's my G.I. Joe, but like, including my Batman lighting setup with my bat wing from the movies, and they're all there on shelves. You can't see them in the lighting, but there you go.
I'm gonna make my Batman and Catwoman.
Oh no, this is a G-rated channel, Steve.
What, little smooch isn't G friendly?
No, I mean, again, you see I have several Catwoman pieces up there. Like, I love that dynamic and character. In fact, right here.
Yeah.
Oh, it's on a shelf now, but I have the wedding book between Batman and Wonder Woman, Batman and Catwoman, with their romance throughout the ages. I love these characters, and I'm not like the biggest Batman fan, like that I know everything about it. Not at all. But I really appreciate it in different arts besides the comics, which I have a lot of them, and I've read a bunch of them, but not all of them. But I do love Year One. I wanted to point this out because there are some wonderful things in this movie that I felt really reflected the tone and some of the aspects of Year One. And now Year One has been visited in Batman for a long time. The animated series, The Mask of the Phantasm, hit a lot of these points, and the original movie had some good points, but like the Nolan series as well, a lot of good little moments are highlighted from this masterpiece. It's a wonderful, well-written narrative of Batman getting started. Have you read it, Steve?
Oh, yes.
Yes. Yeah. Now I haven't read it in a while, so I want to go back and look at it because there's some things that I really appreciate about this film that hit it. So what we decided to do, instead we're going to do like a full a review. I think we could both recommend this movie in the theater. Would you say that? Fair enough?
Yeah. This soundscape alone is always gonna pull me in favor of theaters, but I think the visuals are particularly stunning. Like there's a tone that they've settled into, which is very wet and dark and gloomy and very kind of tungsten light, amber lighting, which is I don't know if home cinema can really do it justice. So
agreed.
Get out there, see it on the big screen.
Yeah, go see it and support theaters anyway for good big movies like this. If you're in Russia, you're out of luck right now to not be able to see this because they're not watching it because of their circumstances. But We recommend it. Go see it. But going forward in this conversation, we're going to go into a spoiler, at least for my list. We're going to do a spoiler discussion. We might keep it kind of vague, but I invited Steve to do 2 partial lists, and we're going to do our grievances and our praises. Best way to put it.
Okay.
For what's good about this movie. And what we were disappointed. I think grievance is probably a strong word. I was a little more disappointed about some things than things I was really frustrated with. I wasn't really frustrated with anything, but there were a few things I was like, oh, you were so close, you know? So we're going to go through that. Do you want to be positive or negative first? What should we do? Praises or grievances first, my friend?
I'd like to settle into the negative, so let's start with the positive. That's okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I'm gonna do my first. I had 4. We decided I'll do 4, and he'll do 3. On the other list, he'll do 3, and I'll do 4. Whatever the opposites are. No, whatever. You'll see.
Well, we can rejig the numbers, but yeah, I've got 4 items of praise and 3 negatives, but we can.
Perfect. That adds up to my list. Okay.
Oh, very
so
good.
let me hit mine. I think mine are going to be pretty simple. And we're not going to spend too much time on all these, and we're not going to rip on them because this movie is not rip-on worthy. I just talked to another buddy of mine to go see it next week, and he's like, I don't know, because you already saw it. I don't want you to sit there talking the whole time. I'm like, this movie is not really commentary worthy. There's not a lot to talk about for me to bother you in the movie to laugh at or mock or say, oh, this is awesome coming up. There's not a lot of chatter involved if you're seeing this again. I need to see it again to kind of follow kind of the last half of the story. But anyway, my number 1 is and these are not in order. We said we're just throwing these out there. These aren't we didn't like put these in any like in an amount of frustration or anything. But my number 1 is
Speak for yourself, Tim. Mine is in ascending order of like
like how much aggravation you experience at different moments.
No. Once again, not aggravation worthy at all. Right. But let's get our thoughts out there.
Okay. So number 1 for me is who the crap is Bruce Wayne in this movie? Like, there was in a 3-hour movie, you should have a little bit of flavor for who this guy is. Again, spoilers. There's the scene in the middle of the movie where you don't even meet Bruce Wayne. You see him as Bruce Wayne like a couple times, but it's like him like taking the suit off and he's putting on a t-shirt and you see him all cut up and bruised and everything, which everyone loves those war wound shots. They're awesome and they're great from comics and stuff, but like you need a few minutes where you can establish who this guy is, especially in Gotham, because the character of Bruce Wayne, not Batman, Bruce Wayne, is a big part of the plot. Like in the last half, it's pretty heavy. Like he is elemental in their reaction to the Wayne family and his heritage. But like you never see who he is. I'm not saying you need him in board meetings and talking to Lucius Fox and all that stuff. You don't need all of that. But you need more than one conversation for like 2 seconds about cufflinks to what he's going to wear to the mayor's funeral. Because from what we saw with Bruce Wayne in this movie, like I don't think anyone would even pay attention to whether or not Bruce Wayne showed up. Like, no, that's not going to be a big article because, like, we didn't see this guy in Gotham at all.
So Tim is advocating that in this 3-hour movie, which is already overstuffed, we stuff a little bit more Bruce Wayne in there. Yeah.
No, I'm saying you should alter some of the stuff that was stuffed. I'm saying there's plenty you could have cleaned up a little bit, tightened up the editing a little bit. I don't need big scenes at Wayne Industries or him talking to people and talking about stocks and all that stuff and deals going south. I just when he says you need to keep a persona, Alfred says something like that. I'm like, well, we never see that. You don't see him walk around the models or whatever. You know what I mean? And you can work it in with the scenes with Heath Ledger in The Dark Knight. The parties and the dinners and stuff, it was completely in service of the story.
There's a good balance, of course.
Yeah.
Yes.
So anyway, I'm not. You don't need to focus entirely on Bruce Wayne at all. That's not my point. But I needed something to tell me who this guy is in Gotham City because he's supposed to be a big deal, and the story even points out that he has this heritage and this legacy and whatever. Anyway, number 2 for me, plot armor. I don't need a lot of death and casualties, but like when you have like the black lady at the podium at the end of the movie with like 5 redneck snipers shooting at her, and she takes like one hit in the gut, and then like in the next scene she's like fine and wading water, and she's like completely fine. There's a scene where Alfred has a bomb and he tosses it behind a wooden desk and it blows up, and then he's alive through it. And worst of all, there's a scene where Batman is talking to the guy with explosives with the cell phone strapped to his hand, and he misses the riddles or whatever, and the guy lets the countdown go off. Batman doesn't turn his head or anything, explodes right in front of him. Fiery Batman blows back, and then he's just fine, just no scathe or anything. I'm like, I understand his armor will protect him, but like,
it's incredible armor. That I mean, the amount of times he's getting shot in that film is staggering. Yes. They really leaned into exactly how high tech this armor is. So
yeah,
I mean,
but a big flame
he did
burst
put up
in
his
your
hand,
face.
didn't he?
I did not. If they did, it was he was like, I don't know. I was like, hey, even if he did. Remember when Two-Face got burned? It showed him turning his head or whatever. Like any version of Two-Face, it shows when he's like whatever. But it was just like too many people got in explosions or gunfights and stuff, and they were fine. And I was like, I don't know. Anyway, and I gotta tell you, Catwoman looked pretty beautiful in the face, having been smashed in the face with a pool cue at the end of the movie. So, anyway, pacing. I'm gonna say this one. That's my third one. Okay. I'm gonna be very delicate here. I am not so ignorant and immature in appreciating film that I cannot have a slow paced movie to enjoy, especially even an action or comic book movie. The Joker with Joaquin Phoenix, he's on screen. There's not much action in that movie. It's very slow, but you are entertained the entire time. I'm fixated on everything that he is doing. This movie, as I thought about it, I don't think there's a single scene without Batman. And as we said, not much Bruce Wayne, but like with Batman on camera pretty much the whole time. It's his journey, which I think you're going to talk about. But like him being there the whole time, it's great. I'm intrigued by him. He does so much with his looking around. I noticed this, like, this is kind of the point, but like Michael Keaton Batman, it was just rubber. He had to turn. This is how he turned and looked around, and it was cool. I thought it was awesome. People make fun of that. He just him looking around. I was like, that's awesome. It's like it makes his shape. He's the shape moving around, like it's menacing. And then they got into the jokes about being able to turn your head. And so when Nolan or when Christian Bale looks at he like turns to the kid and he looks around and stuff. I'm like, that's fine. But Pattinson just stands there. And his eye does all the work. I don't know if you really noticed that. Like his eye was so distinctive in the lighting, the way they did that. You just see his beautiful chin, and I think that's my favorite part of it's not my favorite cowl, but the way they do the jawline. This is like the perfect amount of face to show. It's gorgeous for the light and the way they do it cinematically. And him just looking around, like what he's seeing. And then they establish with the context, there's a reason for that. He's looking at the things he needs to record and document. I was that is so fascinating. But you're watching him the whole time, but like I wasn't hooked like I was watching Joker the whole time, or watching Heath Ledger come in and out of scenes that I'm like fixated on, like what he's just so mesmerizing, or following the journey in Batman Begins, or even waiting for something exciting to happen in the Michael Keaton Batman, or trying to figure out the motives of Batman Returns. I felt like it's hard to say. I don't want to say it's not entertaining. I think it's just too long, but it feels its length. That's a common thing people say, but you can have a long movie without, Joker doesn't have a lot of pacing. It's pretty one tone the whole time, but it's great. You're not bored. For some reason, I felt bored by the end of this. Even when they got picking up some action sequences at the end, there wasn't enough really to redeem that. And I wasn't like sitting there checking my watch or anything. Not like Dune. This isn't the same issue I had with Dune. But I don't know. I think they just could have spiced it up a little more with maybe a little more action. But it's not about there wasn't enough action. Does that make sense? I don't want to sound like I'm totally immature with this stuff.
Yeah, I think the final act, it was such a departure that it felt divorced from the rest. So naturally, it got a bit boring. Like all of a sudden, you're bringing in this militia to make up Riddler's army. All of a sudden, his plan, which was very subtle, very much about discrediting public officials. He was basically working like an investigative lawyer would. Like he was unearthing this plot, and then all of a sudden to have this massive turn to it being a supervillain plot to try and drown Gotham City and get these armed gunmen to take shots at civilians and mayoral candidate Real. I think that was.
Did that jump have a? Did you bump into that as an issue? That jump from him being this mastermind, uncovering these motivations and the real history of Arkham or of Gotham City and the Waynes and everything. Very intriguing.
It was a very abrupt gear change that all of a sudden tried to have its cake and eat it as a superhero movie.
Make it a superhero movie. Yes, well put.
Yeah. I was enjoying the noir up until that point.
Yeah,
and
I agree.
And to almost counter your first criticism, I enjoyed the level of Batman that we had in this. I enjoyed a Batman movie that didn't immediately kind of put the villains as the kind of the first top billing, and then Batman somewhere underneath that, and then like Bruce Wayne all the way at the bottom. Like this one was entirely Batman. It was very unitary in its focus. We incorporated elements of his past, elements of his Bruce Wayne persona, almost just in rumor and in speaking of them, and no actual flashbacks. We would just this world, because by now Batman has permeated pop culture to the extent that it has. We didn't need to see the killing of his parents again. It was spoken about. We didn't need to see his sort of inactivity as his Bruce Wayne persona, because once again it was spoken about. It doesn't need to be shown. And my first item of praise is that there is a very don't tell element to this film.
Yes.
And it applies to his detective work, to his level of collaboration with
Gordon,
Lieutenant Gordon, on this one,
and Catwoman.
Like, everything is very presented matter-of-factly. There's no lantern being hung on the fact that like he's got a grapple hook launcher on his belt and he has a wingsuit. Like all these things are presented as they are required. So we don't need a scene with Lucius Fox like discussing the tech, which is now that I think about it, a very James Bond trope. And I think Chris Nolan has long talked about wanting to do a James Bond film.
Really?
I think he's now surpassed that need with things like Tenet. But
that's what I say. I love that in Batman Begins, because that's a great concept in an origin story. And I still say Batman Begins is the greatest origin story, superhero origin story. I think it's fantastic. Maybe up there with Richard Donner's Superman the movie. I think in a lot of ways that's comparable in a very different way, or very different types of stories. But I like seeing him put together where he gets the different pieces and ideas, the dummy company and all that stuff. That little dialogue where he comes up with the imagery of the bat, all that stuff is fascinating. But here, you're right, he's established. We don't need to see that this thing came off because he ordered it from Taiwan or whatever. It's like we see him use it. He just cuts through the ribbon. We didn't know where it came from, and then he just goes like that. We're like, oh, that's awesome, And it's like, yeah, it's just shown to you. That's a good observation. But yeah, the pacing, I just think maybe it was bloated. I think just altering, but I agree with you. I love how heavy set it was on the hero. We watched the Batman. This wasn't the Riddler or Penguin, right?
Sure.
And they did a great job with it. I think you could have squeezed in just a line or two would have done the job if it was done well, of who is Bruce Wayne, and just tightening up, maybe easing some of the action a little differently than all this weird superhero stuff at the end, this big comic book, big flooding story plot version, because he could have done that at any time. If that was his real end game, who cares? He could have put out his YouTube video about here's why I uncovered, here's my conspiracy theory about this, and boom, blow up the dam. Like, why play all the mind games just to get to that, Anyway, the pacing, that was my issue. The other thing, last one I have on my grievances.
I've got a potential answer to that question though, Tim. Why make that the end game? Because by doing that, Batman loses. I mean, it's not just Gotham losing. It's the Riddler has actually defeated Batman, which is kind of paradoxically a takeaway that becomes one of my positives for this film, is that by the end of it, the bad guy kind of won. His plan succeeded.
Yeah.
He has discredited all these officials, brought the system down, and he has, in a very violent way made Batman lose the kind of the physical struggle as well.
Right.
By flooding Gotham. And wow, that is a city on the brink of disaster
He didn't
all the
save
time.
the city. Yeah. And there wasn't, like in the Batman Begins, there wasn't some throwaway line where like, oh, the gas only got to the Narrows and the rest of the city is fine. This is like, yeah, Gotham is kind of in trouble.
What an Achilles heel to have to a city, though. A seawall? Are you kidding me? Have the tides risen so dramatically that like it's actually threatening to flood the city the whole time? That's incredible.
And then everyone's plan was to run to the sports arena, which was dipped in. I was like, what?
Whoops.
I was like, a football stadium goes up. Go to Gotham, the one that Bane blew up, you know? Don't go to the pit. Yeah. So my last that's a good point, and I think there, you know, him having a grand scheme, like his final move was good, but like when you see stuff like that, especially in a movie that had this kind of a style and the pacing, it's usually something like traumatic that's like character driven, like he killed someone that you didn't even know he was targeting. You thought they were saved, you forgot about them, some kind of a twist like that. But that it was like, oh, we set up bombs, and then they're, as he's piecing it together, uncovering the carpet, like literally uncovering the last clue, the bombs start going off around him, and he's like, well, he figured it out as it's happening, not like, oh, it already happened. They tried that earlier with when Alfred got blown up. He calls, he's like racing back to the tower, and they're like, oh, you're too late. He already got blown up, but he's just in the hospital, and you can go talk to him. He's fine. You know, it's like there was a lot of weight that was kind of undercut from that. But anyway,
sure. Well, I mean, this film was a standalone, and it certainly had the potential to kill off a major character like Alfred.
I don't even die.
For a whole 2.5 minutes, I was concerned that maybe they'd killed him off, but
yeah. Nope. But like his racing, the music, the panic, his driving, his trying to get the phone ringing, like all that stuff, it was done really well. Like it was like a Saw plot line, like a Saw movie. Here's a twist where you don't know. Here's something, like the chronology didn't add up like you thought it was the whole time you're watching the movie, or like The Prestige, where something mind-blowing was going on the whole time and you didn't realize it. Like I felt like there was something, a little emptiness by the end of the Riddler's schemes. Like it was really well done, but like not a lot of having just some bombs blowing up. So whatever. Sure. Anyway, pacing. The last thing, I'm just gonna say editing and directing. I'm not saying they're both bad. What I'm saying is I don't know where to shift the blame to, because there's a lot of sequences I felt like I lost track of who was where in the fighting. The visuals were great, but there was points where like we watched the Batman v Superman fight where Batman's beating up all the guys in that little warehouse, and like you know exactly what's going on. It looks gorgeous, and it's like there's great choreography, and the stunts and everything are great. The visuals and the people going through walls and crates breaking and guns going off, everything is awesome. This one had some good scenes, like some good combat, but like there's a point where he grapples like two guys and he jumps off the back and he like lands on a platform. I couldn't figure out if he spun around and landed or he fell somewhere else, or like he's the part where he's there with the Penguin shootout where they're behind the cars, him and Catwoman, and he's like down on the ground because he took a bunch of shots, I guess, because he couldn't really tell. They both get shot at and he goes his arm up like he blocked, but then all of a sudden he's laying down and she's like hiding around the cars. Penguin's coming around with the machine gun, and then all of a sudden the Batmobile revs up. And then she like looks back and sees the car comes and goes at Penguin, and then they have a car chase, and suddenly Batman's in the car. I was like, when did he get to the car? I was like, if the whole point was like he did it sneakily, you need to have a second where she looks down and sees he's missing, so we start figuring it out, you know? But like the editing, it was just like I couldn't follow some things that were going on in some of those tight sequences, and it could have been directing too, because the camera work was really tight on a lot of, which is the cinematographer.
I like that. I like the fact that there weren't too many vast, extreme long shots of the action. You were very situated in it, and by doing that, they avoided any janky like computer enhanced, visuals. Like it was very in camera.
Yeah, I do like that too, and I'm saying there's ways that you can balance it, that you can keep your geography and your bearings on what's going on. I just got lost a couple of times. The scene at the end where the last scene where he's fighting the guys with the lighting, when the lights go out and he goes and beats up the guys with machine guns and stuff like that. Gorgeous. Like there was some really cool action. I'm just saying, like a couple of those fights, I was like, hey, wait, what happened? So anyway, maybe that's me. I don't know.
No.
But those are my 4. So who's Bruce Wayne? The plot armor for several very critical injuries that just got deflected. The pacing and some of the editing and some of the combat. The only other I'm just gonna throw one more little what's it called? Runner up, I guess, for me before you do yours is I was really sad that it felt like they were really building up for a Gotham PD hunting down and chasing the Batman, which is a great story element. There's a lot of cool stuff you can do with action. They've done it in in comics and the animated series, all kinds of stuff. And they set it up when he escaped the prison, and then just stopped. He's just like he's just hanging out with the cops a little too casually for being a year 2 Batman in this movie. So I was just like, I was really excited when he escaped that freaking skyscraper full of police, and he got out. And then it was like the next scene, he's fine. He's just hanging out at the crime scenes, talking with them and stuff. There was never that moment where it's like Gordon's like, I can't cover him anymore. We have to hunt him down, which is what I was excited about at the end of Dark Knight, and then they didn't do anything with after that. But anyway, I was just a little. I want a good Batman on the run from the cops in a movie, and we've never really had it. But go ahead.
Would you like my praise or my?
No, so do your grievances, then we'll go back to my praises.
All right. Well, we've spoken about it before, but the length works against a film like this when it does a sort of a sharp left turn. Then all of a sudden you are very aware of how long you've been in this film. Like I almost want the spell of the crime noir to continue and not to be broken. Like I enjoyed the detective work. This is a very different Batman approach in that it does treat him as a detective, even though the Riddler's kind of the biggest cheat because he kind of guides you. But Batman fell into every single one of his traps. So once again, it is a huge positive for me that, well, we'll get into it. But, the fact that the good guy doesn't win is always going to be fun.
This is a grievance? You were talking about the length. That is a little below.
Yeah, the length would be the grievance. This is a nitpick, but it's something that broke me out. Maybe it's just curious to me because I find this band and its sort of most notorious album and the most notorious sort of last track on that album to be a kind of a pull a rug out from under me moment, but the Nirvana song. Something in the Way, which I suppose if you're a fan of the Pixies before you saw Fight Club, hearing Where Is My Mind play at the end, which is that anthemic moment which everyone was like, yes, might have also broken you out of it. But like that song is way too significant to me personally for it to be played almost in its entirety as you kick off this film. So that snapped me out in a weird way because it starts off non-diegetic, like it's not in the scene. It plays over the scene and it kind of forms the accompaniment to his voiceover and his diary writing. And then all of a sudden he clicks it off on a sort of music player, which then works it diegetically into the scene. And the whole time I'm thinking like, this is something that you expect in a lesser film, a film that is far less ambitious to have like an actual track, from another artist, because there's no ways Kurt Cobain wrote that thinking, 30 years later when I'm dead, this is going to be used for some big budget blockbuster. But so stuff like that breaks me out. It really does. Like a film like this needs an original score, and the original score by Giacchino is excellent, but it relies on the motif from Something in the Way, that 3-to-1 progression, that jum jum chicka jum jum chicka jum, that is permeating the entire film. And for someone like me, it just is a callback to Nirvana, and I'm like, this is a weird taste to have in my Batman movie.
I didn't think about it. What is the era of this? I guess it's contemporary, right?
Yes, it is contemporary, so it's not in the early 90s or anything like that.
Well, I guess they have like iPhones and stuff, so.
But Gotham is played very timelessly in a sense.
Yes, and I like
great
that.
great bit of anachronism there.
Yeah.
And I think my other grievance would just be, oh damn it, Tim, I actually think I'm coming up short here, man.
No, I gave an extra one, so that's fine.
All right, we've made 7.
We got 7.
Let's get on to
that
our praise,
one song
pal.
that pulled you out. That's funny.
Okay,
And
and
you
they
want to go
played it
first?
again at the end. They bookended this film, so obviously this track is of huge importance. Makes me start to like decode the lyrics. Like, all the animals I've caught have all become my pets. Something like that. It's okay to eat fish because they don't have any feelings. Was that a reference to the penguin? I don't know. Like, yeah,
that's funny. Well, that's interesting. I thought the music or the songs were, but I'm not. I was never a big music guy, and I was around. Nirvana came up during my age and everything, and I was like, I didn't pick up I didn't have any connections with it outside of seeing it in a movie like this. So it was like it didn't really pull me out like into an era or anything like that. So that's interesting that they had that. Do you want to go first on praises, or do you want me to go?
Yeah, I'll knock mine out nice and quick. I think I've pretty much hinted at them already, but Batman being presented very, let's get down to business. No flashbacks to his parents' death. No scenes to do sort of exposition on his equipment. It's like, if I need a grapple hook launcher, it's there. I'm going to use it in the scene. Wingsuit. The bulletproof imperviousness of his armor isn't ever explained, but we see that clearly, like, bullets are sparking off it. So underneath the I suppose leather appearance, there must be something really hard, really advanced, really expensive.
Did you like
the overall?
Go ahead.
The overall presentation of Gotham is fantastic. Like, it's not completely gothic with gargoyles on every single building, but of course that would be on certain buildings of that era, but like, it wasn't so stylized that it felt like a cartoon, but it was signature enough to not make you think, oh, this is just Chicago dressed up off the top.
Yes, yeah.
Everything looked gloomy and rainy, and the aesthetic was very, very definitive. So love that.
Like the Tim Burton movies were a little over the top for that for you, but the Nolan ones were a little underwhelming for creating like a vibe that is Gotham City.
It's probably often people's complaints, but yeah, this did feel, absolutely.
I agree
like
with
a
you.
real Gotham, like something that is altogether its own thing. It's not like any other city in this world. So it's distinctively Gotham. Like, you could, like, any comic book reader would immediately know, oh, this is Gotham City.
Yeah, and there were little things too, like in the opening where it's kind of panning through the streets a little bit. Like, you see like the backed up garbages, which I thought was kind of like, that was a pull from the Joker movie. That was a big plot line there. That there's like the big skyscrapers, but they're not like upkept. Everyone seems unhappy. The criminology and everything, and that just seems very commonplace on the streets, which felt like the opening sequence of the Batman '89 movie, which didn't. The rest of it just felt kind of like scuzzy and creepy. But like, I agree. It's tone's a huge thing for me. The tone of the city really felt like Gotham. And it's supposed to be distinctive. You're right. It's supposed to be like where she's making comments like, you're not going to win the city back, And he's like, well, I got to try. That's the whole point of Batman.
Yeah.
And in Batman Begins, they establish where he has that, you see the corporate enterprise world, and then you see him on the streets when he's like eavesdropping and stuff, and her getting mugged on the train and all that. They did a good job of like establishing kind of the economics, the status differences, and where you have the point of what the Narrows is. And how dangerous it is. Cops don't even go there. Like, wow, this is like an established world, a lived-in world for Batman to live. This one did a decent job. I agree, though. It was especially the second and third. It was Chicago, But I'll take that over a set from they're filming it on a studio. They're filming out in the city. But they did a good job. I agree with that. That's a good pull.
My final praise is just the moral ambiguity that we see a Batman movie being presented in now. I guess we're in a post-Joker world where we've watched an entire blockbuster feature film where it's about the villain. Like, the baddest dude is our central figure, and we're kind of pulled between rallying for him and sympathizing with him, and then absolutely decrying him as this villain. So Batman doesn't win. Thomas Wayne is not a saint. Like these kind of underbellies are important in a kind of a gray, ethically gray world. I think presenting Batman as like, has he actually made a positive impact on the city? It's unclear, and yet he cannot do anything else. He's committed to this path.
And
like,
in his
the
monologue,
question is asked of him,
out.
like, Bruce Wayne could be doing more. He could be doing more philanthropy. He's let that slide. Like, this is a deeply flawed individual. He's like, no, this is my best application of all of my resources and myself. Like, I cannot share myself into any other function, which is something that the Chris Nolan Batman tried to do a bit of both for. You know, he was secretly doing good things. He was acting like an absolute layabout playboy as well, and then crime fighting. I mean, this enormous three-way split. This one is entirely focused, like devoted to the Batman or vengeance. As they call it.
I like that. I like how it was a very gray area who Thomas Wayne was. Where in the Joker, that was the first time you saw Thomas Wayne as anything but just this great, I work at the hospital because I like helping people, but my company takes care of the city. Like he was a little whitewashed in that. That's probably not the right word, but you know what I'm saying. But like in Joker, it was like, well, let's look at the other side of that. How do the lower class see Thomas Wayne? And he wasn't necessarily a bad person, but he definitely did represent like the rich people. And so when like there was the shooting on the train and everything, he was like, he killed these poor Wall Street kids, and they're like, oh, screw that, And this one, it's kind of there's a good balance there, and Batman or Bruce has to kind of figure out where does he fit in there. Where he points out, I was going to say, he says, crime and everything has gone up since he put on the cowl. He says, like, am I really making an influence? And at the end, when he takes out the bad guys, they were influenced by the Riddler, who, by the way, thought he was like in league with Batman, that they had the same agenda. Even though maybe not working directly together, but he was like, we're united, we're the same. And they were both influential, that when they took down the one guy, and then Gordon's like, who the hell are you? He's like, I am vengeance. And Batman's like, that's what I think I am. And he's not like he stole the line. He never said that, but he's like, his whole thing is, I'm avenging my parents, I'm avenging the city. And here's a criminal who feels that he's avenging the city as well. And he was inspired by a villain. And so Batman's like got to completely, reframe and recalibrate what his motives are by the end of the movie. And that's why he's like, I'm just going to stay and fight for the city, and I can't go hang out with Catwoman.
He's been complicit with the Riddler's plan. He's performed
sure.
And the Riddler's like, well, we're a team. And he's like, no, we're not. Well, sure, beat us. I mean, like, you definitely acted like a team without realizing it.
And the show don't tell.
To quote Danny DeVito's Penguin, he played Batman like a harp from hell. Okay, slightly paraphrased, but Batman definitely danced to the Riddler's tune.
Yeah.
Look, the moral ambiguity is baked into the character if you think about it. He's a rich kid with all the toys going up and beating up on criminals who are society's perhaps most desperate rung. Not necessarily organized crime, but certainly like, Batman doesn't necessarily distinguish between white collar crime and just the guy with a gun holding up a grocery store. Yeah.
And there was that line too where he was like, you were this, or he kept saying Bruce Wayne. It was almost like, does he really know that Batman is Bruce Wayne? But he did.
Oh, it's great.
Like,
nice
Bruce Wayne, he doesn't know what it was like to be an orphan. The whole world stopped to look with pity on this orphan that had the billions of dollars to like help help the medicine go down or whatever. But he's like, that's not an orphan. An orphan sat in a room with like 30 kids where one of them died every year from the cold and stuff like that. And it's like, man, I can see the resentment towards Bruce Wayne. I can see why he was the target. But like, again, like you said, the show don't tell. What a masterpiece was at the end, or a great moment, when he was in jail watching on the news, when the headline on the lower third on the channel was like, Batman helps the people or whatever, helps save hundreds of lives or whatever. And he's looking at like his plan that was executed. The flood happened, but Batman, who he thought was with him, is being praised as a hero for saving people. He's like, oh, he's a counter to what I tried to accomplish. That him and his freaking out and screaming was about that. It wasn't about the flood or the people that didn't die. It was about he lost who he looked up to as an ally, that they were doing the same thing. Brilliant. It's really brilliant. Was that all your praises?
Yeah, I'm tick, tick, tick.
Okay, well, I got 3. 4. 3? 3. Okay, number 1, the score.
Okay.
Dude, listening to it's not like it's. I called my brother after I finished the movie. He's like, "Yeah, I already heard the music." I'm like, "No. It's not that. It's not like you listen to it like recreationally. That's not the point. What the music does during different scenes, and the goal of a score is that you don't notice the score." But
you shouldn't.
Exactly, you shouldn't notice that it's there if it's a good score. But what I appreciated was there was a lot of little homages to other pieces of Batman music that I love. When the Batmobile charges in, the music was very much like the animated series. It was very adventurous and exciting. When he first was watching Selena Kyle and she started putting on the costume for the first time, which is kind of a pervy little moment right there, but it was cool because he didn't know. But it started playing the music that was very much like.
You don't know what he did with the replay afterwards.
Yeah, he has recorded. That's it. He has a different bank for that.
Can we just say that Zoe Kravitz makes a fabulous Catwoman? I loved her Selena Kyle.
I didn't put her on my praise, but I was like juggling. Oh, I did. I put her as a runner-up, but I was like, yes, her storyline, her emotions, her vibe, her presence on the camera, everything she did was pitch perfect for what she was in this story. A broken, her line about strays. That's her. She's a stray, and like that's.
If ever they wanted to do a romantic Batman film, like they've done crime noir, they've done superhero. Like if they did a romance, I'd be down for that.
A real one.
If the relationship between the Bat and the Cat actually took center stage for once.
I'd be in, yeah. But she did. But anyway, she was putting on her stuff. The little music from when Christopher Returns, in Batman Returns with the Catwoman music, that little upbeat music, and then some of those long notes like in The Dark Knight that felt very Jokerish and things. I really appreciated the score because little moments here and there, without being too obvious or going too much outside of what this movie is trying to do with the score, it like hit little beats here and there that really kind of brought a vibe in that you felt a little appreciation. Love that. The Batmobile chase, I gotta say, where I wasn't getting bored at this point at all. I was enjoying the story and everything, but once they got to that moment, even though I got confused because Batman was just laying on the ground and then instantly the car revs up and I was like, oh, it's on autopilot, and then it starts chasing the Penguin or whatever.
Praise.
Yeah, well, thanks for the reminder. And then he appears in there, whatever. So, but like that whole thing, the build up, dude, my seat, and you talk about sound going to the theater. I was in an IMAX, and my seater, my chair was like vibrating from how powerful these engines were, and it was so cool. And I was like, oh, that, and I didn't care when I saw the pictures of the Batmobile originally. And I'm not a big Batmobile, I'm not a Tumblr guy. I didn't mind it in Batman v Superman. The Michael Keaton Batmobile is the greatest Batmobile, but like, I'm not really, I'm not a car guy anyway. So like this Mustang muscle car look, this American muscle car, I'm like, whatever. But like when it charged up and the lights were going, it was like in the smoke and you had like the blue lights and the red light and everything. Like, oh, this is awesome. And it stopped. And the camera stopped to appreciate everyone's reaction to what is this vehicle. And it was a very different thing than when the Tumbler was revealed because it wasn't all comedic. Or even in the first movie when Vicky Vale's like, which car? He's like, and then you see the shields come up and stuff. Like, like whenever they introduce the Batmobile, that's got to be a moment. I was impressed that I actually gave a crap about this moment revealing the Batmobile because it was exciting. And then they did the chase without all this sci-fi, these weird gadgets. It was just a cool car that was hitting the cities, and his stunt driving, he wasn't going into a lower thing to shoot missiles and all this stuff. It was just him driving on the streets, not on rooftops. Again, it's awesome for that movie, but this was different to the point where when the Penguin finally thought he got away, and then he hits the thruster, whatever, the nitro or whatever, he shoots up with the blue flame, which would look cool, launches out, and then even though, again, editing issue, he was up there for a long time for Penguin to do his little lines. I did it, I got away, or whatever. It's like 30 seconds later of the film, and then you see Batman flying out of the flame. The rolling, this was brilliant in the editing, but the rolling of the car for Penguin, and then he stops and looks, and the camera is like inverted because you're seeing his perspective. Batman stepping out, flames all behind him, his flowing cape, and he just slowly walks to him, and I was like, oh my gosh, I love it. And then he kneels down, sweat dripping up. The camera is just beautiful. But that whole thing, very satisfying. And then you end with the interrogation. What is this bad cop? And I don't remember, what was the line? I don't remember. But and then at the end, the Penguin does his little penguin walk. Did you catch that when he's like in his cuffs?
Oh, because he got the cuffs. Yeah.
That's brilliant.
That's
Anyway.
a nice touch. Well, look, I mean, if I give Zoe Kravitz praise, Colin Farrell, what a transformation. that is
makeup.
Insane. I couldn't get enough of him. I was like, let's just watch the Batman Penguin movie. I just want that now.
And he's a new guy at the end. It's like, that's a setup for a villain. Like he could do, he's not just some guy running the club who's observing everything. Now he's like, I'm invested now. But anyway, all right, my favorite, this one is priority. This is my favorite thing about the movie, which kind of led to some of the disappointment of the rest of it. The first 15 minutes of this film were, I would go buy a ticket just to watch the first 15 minutes because it was that solid. Again, tone, music, everything I love. I didn't really like the thing where the Riddler was watching the guy in the mansion, like breathing. It had this like Halloween vibe, which was fine, but like it wasn't as cool of an opening as The Dark Knight was. I think if you're gonna start with the villain, The Dark Knight was amazing with the little dialogue and everything. Like, who is this guy? But it was fine. It was just kind of weird him watching these blurry. Yeah, I mean, it was visually and everything wasn't very captivating, but like they should have just started with the guy watching the news and then him appearing behind him. You didn't need the stalking scene. It cut, whatever. But everything else, the bat signal's up there. They know who this is, and you get from the vibe from different people reacting to when they see the bat signal. It's just like the opening of Dark Knight when they make that line. He's like, Batman's not coming. And Gordon's like, I just wanted to remind people he's out there. The first 15 minutes is that line just in fruition. It's beautiful. And like everyone is looking, and because you don't know where Bruce Wayne is, they don't really like show him quite yet. And there you see the guys on the subway, the guy going to the convenience store, and like the people are like out going into their crime. And like you don't know where Batman or Bruce Wayne is. You don't know if he's dressed as Batman or if he's just watching these people. But they are freaked out when they see the signal, and they're looking at shadows and they're imagining him there, that they drop what they're doing and then they retreat or they stop. And
did you enjoy the voiceover though, Tim? Or do you feel like it was superfluous? You did. Okay, good.
Yeah, because and the dating, because that again, that's from Batman Year One. He has the date and he does the narration. That was one of my other problems. Is like I wish they had done it more than just at the beginning, the very end. Right. Now, not too much because it's not Spiderman. That's a Spiderman thing. But like him processing what influence he has, I think that adds to it. It got me into it where his like what we're seeing being showing and told at the same time, well done. If it's good dialogue, and it was good narration, I thought it was really good. But yeah, the setup when you have the crime and the music, and seeing how bad the city is, and then the bat signal, and I like how the bat signal is not a beautiful, perfect circle. It's a very vague in the clouds, like a really messed up bat signal. But like,
good thing there's always this low hanging cloud in Gotham, because I could just imagine like if it was a clear night, you just have a beam,
just stars. That's a good point. But then you get to the part where the guy's on the subway, and again, this reminded me of Joker, but like then they start following the guy, and you can tell like the one guy, see don't tell. The one guy has half of his face covered, where it's like his initiation or something, that he doesn't have the full paint on. So because they capture the guy and they say you are the one that has to beat him up, and then you get this very awesome, ominous vibe. They turn, you hear the footsteps down the stairs, really quiet, really heavy feet. And when he's coming, and you're like, okay, now I know he's there. And they are freaked out. They're kind of squaring up, ready to go. And then he finally steps out, and then he struts very slowly. And I love also, it's not just that Batman moves very slowly in this movie. It's very menacing. It's a great presence on the camera again. But like Bruce Wayne also moves slow, but I think it's because he's tired and recovering. But when he comes out there, again, it's a Michael Myers thing. It really feels like that. It feels like when he's engaged, they approach him and he gets hit. He's not like flawless, you know, when he fights back. He gets hit a few times and he can take the hits because of his armor. Great. And then he fights back, and you can tell in the end when the gunfight, when he gets pissed, he responds. Almost as good when Ben Affleck got stabbed and he got pissed and stabbed the guy back. That was awesome. But anyway, everything about the tone, how menacing it was. He was like, he struck, and they pull out their phones and he didn't care. And that was the cool thing, was like different reactions to different cops or criminals, people he came in contact with. Some of them were like, who is this guy? Other people were like, oh, that's him, you know? It's like, what experience has this guy had in Gotham City? I was completely fascinated by. And
you
then
just reminded me of something that I quite liked. I mean, yes, Batman generally moves very stealthily, very deliberately, very, very slowly and menacingly when he needs to be. But I think this is the first time, at least I can remember, where we saw Batman flat out sprinting. The escape from the police station, he was bulleting it, which tells me that this costume is very practical. You know, it had a kind of a bagginess to it that allowed perhaps more unrestricted movement than previous Bat outfits.
Michael Keaton ran with Vicky Vale, very top-heavy armor, and the rubber suits in the Schumacher films where they had like rubber ears bouncing and stuff. It never looked good until now.
Oh yes, of course they try those big like running with the bat symbol behind them sort of to finish off. But yeah, no, this is very realistic, very practical, very like of necessity. He's just sprinting. He's not just sprinting to look cool. He's like, those cops are about to grab his cape, literally. All that stuff. And the cape wasn't just there. It was like the bad guys didn't grab him; they're dragging him by the cape. You know, it was like it gets in his way. But I agree. I really like that. I felt like this was a real Batman, like in real world. Like no one was. It felt real, but like it was all this military tech, which is, you know, based on real tech, but we never see it, so it seems a little too superficial or sci-fi a little bit. This one felt like just a guy with like tank armor on and gets hit. I mean, even when he has his glide suit open, like it's not aesthetically, it's not like a bat wing, you know. It's just okay. It's a real wingsuit, yeah. I mean, he takes the most epic hit I've ever seen a human being take. Like when he hits that overpass.
Oh yeah. He bounces off and was rolling. That was one part where the CGI kind of took me out for a sec. And then the last thing about the suit is like the part where he's walking into the club at the end. No, not the club. That was funny. The three approaches at the door. One is Batman, one Bruce Wayne, and then he just sneaks in. But he's wearing this hoodie like over the armor. It's like big, all bulky and everything. That was awesome. But no, that first 15 minutes, seriously, that's like a little mini movie by itself. And it's worth the price of admission. It's so well done. All the guys scared, and like the narration, like honestly, I would pay just to see that sequence. And then you can leave once he gets to the crime scene. And then you start seeing his eyes at work, and just it's amazing. I
think the film had me in its spell until the end of the car chase, and then I'm thinking to myself, where does it go from here, and how can it top that? And in many respects, it doesn't really. The high watermark is running the Penguin off the road, and then I'm kind of like, the film has nothing new left to offer.
But even that action wasn't like a good final act action sequence. And
no, absolutely not.
By the time they get to Maroni, I'm like, even that didn't have. It has some great visual
it had
fights.
to dip back into like the crime noir world where stakes are real and you know, making discoveries about Thomas Wayne should hold some weight. I'm like, nah, we've already gotten into a gunfight. Like now it's about overt violence, action, and daring do. So it has tonally these shifts.
It's like it kept trying. It was like overstaying its welcome.
Unfortunately, I wanted to love you, Batman, the Batman. But it's just, you know, it's an emotion slightly less than love. It's all right. Enjoyment.
So let's end on this. Where do you place this with the other Batman movies? Is this top 5, top 3, bottom? Not even on the list.
I have really come around in terms of The Dark Knight Rises. in terms of really enjoying that film. So I actually like put it squarely behind the Nolan.
Oh, I'm sorry. Wait, I'm sorry. Dark Knight Rises. Yes. Heath Ledger.
No. Rises being the Bane.
Oh, never mind. Okay,
so
sorry.
it's actually it's in fourth spot for me.
This one, fourth. So what are your four? Just tell me your four.
Oh, the Nolan 3 are on top.
Just all three. Which is your?
Dark Knight is in the top spots. Then Begins. Then Rises. Then the Batman. And the rest can kind of fight it out. I mean, out of nostalgia alone, 89 and 92 are kind of on a pedestal, but they're not terrific Batman movies, if you know what I mean. They're definitely Tim Burton flicks with a bit of Batman in them.
Yeah.
And certainly a lot of the Rogues Gallery. Chewing the scenery, man.
I mean, if we were putting Joker in there, Joker's in my top 3 favorite movies of all time. Like as far as film, like it's a masterpiece. I love it. But Michael Keaton up there again for nostalgia. But I think there's a lot of things that did well, especially for the time. It's hard to compare to new ones, but I think again, Batman Begins is the best superhero origin story. It's just really well done. And we're not doing a review on that right now. I'm just saying the non-linear storytelling, it was interesting because that's the thing that Nolan enjoys, and he had it down. It was perfected in that movie because it's only for like the first third of the movie. Then it goes into like regular storytelling.
Tim, I'm pulling you back, baby.
No, I'm just saying it's a masterpiece. It's perfect, yes, but like it was unique. The other ones, Heath Ledger is the only thing great about the other one. It's not a good Batman movie to me. Okay. But anyway, and then the Bane one, no, that's just garbage. But okay, so I put it maybe 3.
Okay.
I think 2. No, because I'm gonna put Batman 89 in there for nostalgia, so I'll put it 4 as well. But definitely the Bane one is not on the list. So okay, well we recommend it. That's what we liked and didn't like about it. Steve, thanks for taking some time to get this out. Now I don't have to think about it anymore. I'm just gonna go watch it.
Oh.
Right, that's what I like about doing this quick fire reviews is just to like spit it out and then I don't have to process anymore, just to get it out. So, but thanks for your time. It was fun, and this is Saints on Cinema, and I don't know if we're gonna do a discussion on the channel, so I might put this after or in place of a review we do because it's hard for us to schedule it. So, Steve, thanks for co-hosting with me today.
This is great. My shot at sainthood.
Yes. So you want to just plug your channel real quick?
I'm not just called G.I.Joburg Steve. I have a YouTube channel called G.I.Joburg, and if you are a fan of G.I. Joe, that's for you. If not, then it's a little oddity that occupies YouTube. We have a podcast every week. Yes, we're 3 South African kids who grew up with G.I. Joe and absolutely love it. Yeah, we can't stop talking about it.
Love your channel.
Cobra!
Love it. Yes. And I got my right here.
Good boy.
Who's better fight, Batman or Snake Eyes?
They've done that, didn't they? They did like a Fortnite.
I don't care about that.
Snake Eyes has no compunctions about killing. I don't know if that gives him the edge. I mean, Batman famously never loses, right? And Snake Eyes canonically has been killed off. So I'm going to give it to Mr. Plot Armor over here.
For reasons of plot armor, I'll give you that. Same thing with like he could beat Superman. I'm like, just because the fans would need
the writers on your side. Yeah, basically.
Yeah. All right. Well, G.I. Joburg is awesome. I watch it live with them every week. I'm a big fan. Steve's bounced on here a few times to talk about films with us, so we appreciate that. Appreciate your time, Steve. You guys are awesome. I'll put all your little plugs right here. But yeah. Hope you go watch Batman. Tell us what you think, and we'll catch you next time on Saints on Cinema. See you guys.
Bye.